Hello everybody, this is Vince and Sherry, co-directors of Pastor Life. Want to bring you a new video today. Again, thank you for following. We've been able to get over 1,000 subscribers, so thank you for that and for watching our videos. Today, we want to look at a subject that what would we do differently if we had to do it all over again? So Sherry and I have been looking back over 40 some years of ministry. What would we do differently if we could have it to do all over again? First of all, I'll be honest with you, I don't want to do it all over again.
If we going back with what we know now, we probably wouldn't do it.
Theoretically, not asking for another 40 years. So
taking all that into consideration.
No, take that into consideration.
We still have a list.
Okay, honey.
Okay, let me start the list. Number one, and some of these are not in any particular order, but I think this one is really important to us. Okay, plan, take, and preserve time off for rest and vacation.
Now see, that one's on me. That one's on me because, some guys are smarter, ladies are smarter. They will look at a 12-month calendar and they will put their vacations in throughout, how many weeks that they get. They're wise at planning if they're going to be on a convention somewhere, add a week's vacation just to get that time of rest in. I wasn't that smart. I felt I had to be there all the time. I don't know if I had a Messiah complex. I don't know if that's another one of the questions or things I wouldn't do again. But definitely have that time of rest to let your mind rest, let your body rest.
And I think one of our weaknesses was whenever we planned something or decided to go somewhere, we would take all calls that came from the church, and you might get calls every day from the church or someone in the church. And then there were demands about things. Where do I find this? Where do I go for this? Someone needs this. And then you start thinking, what? We might as well go home.
Might as well go home.
That's it. And so this is one thing that you mentioned, and I love this statement. Overwork almost always results in poor decisions.
Yes. When you're pastoring or any position where you're in charge and you're having to make decisions, and in any given day you might have to make several decisions that are yes, no, not yet, we'll do it later, or whatever the answer.
Or how we're going to do it.
Or how we're going to do it. There's all kinds. So if you're not resting and you've not given that time to God, you've not dedicated that time to be with Him, and you're overworked and you're kind of overheated, that leads to, I think, bad decisions. You're not thinking them through. You don't have that discipline of getting along with God. And so you make decisions, and they may not be the best ones. So.
And I think it compounds over time. It's like when you're young and you're energetic, you move quickly from one thing to the next. But over time, all of those kind of burdens build up in you.
Yes.
And then it's just very easy to get overwhelmed.
It's kind of like age. When you're young, I used to ride a road bike, and I could ride up to 50 miles a day or at a time. And if I was in an accident, I could heal quicker. But the older I got, the longer it took.
And the more I worried.
Yeah, and that's why the bikes are sitting in the house. Then they're for sale if you're interested.
That's right. Give us a call. Okay. Number two. We're going to go to number two.
Okay.
What we would do differently. Don't expect to have an answer for everything.
Yes. I think when people would approach you, whether it was after a service or during the week or even a phone call, with a question, I always felt I had the responsibility to kind of know everything or give an answer. And there are some questions that you don't have the answer to and will probably never have the answer to, especially when it comes to somebody passing away. There's no answer for that. That's in the hands of God. That's in the heart of God. So the sooner you learn that, the better off you'll be. You don't have to have an answer for every question.
Right. And some of those questions might be spiritual questions, as you referenced. And some of them might be practical questions, or like, Pastor, it's too cold in here. It's too hot in here. The lights are too bright.
I never heard that.
Never. Right. Okay. That's another point on this list.
That's another video. Yeah.
That's another whole video.
How to stay away from the air conditioning. Yeah.
But there's the practical side and the spiritual side, and you never know what someone's going to approach you with or when that's a problem. Yeah. And you have to always kind of be prepared, and you feel like you are always on edge. And it'd be great when you started out if you could realize, look, I don't have to fix everything because I can't. I can't fix everything, and I can't straighten people out.
Well, I think the thing that I dislike when people would ask me questions, they would say, Pastor, I have a question, but I can't answer it now. I'll talk to you next
I
week.
can't ask you.
Yeah, I can't ask you. And you think, well, what is it? What is it that's so secretive that you can't give me a hint? Or, Pastor, I need to talk to you, and I can't tell you what it's
Something
about.
important, but I can't say it. I'll have to wait till next week.
Yeah, so you're thinking, what could it be?
And your mind just goes nuts trying to figure it out. Yes, you can't expect to have an answer for everything. So we'd change that expectation. Number 3, always look to please God and don't get distracted by men's expectations.
Yes, I think when you first start out, you're in a local church, you're pastoring a local church, and you're hearing everybody's stories about the past pastor or, some pastor in the past. Some things are good, some things are bad, and you think, these are their expectations. Well, Pastor Jim always visited on Saturdays, Uncle Jim always did this, or Pastor Jim always did that. And
or his wife always did this or that. She always played the piano for everything. She always led our vacation Bible school, or and that becomes an expectation.
So you start listening to all these different voices,
Yes.
and the main voice you need to listen to is God's.
Yes.
And that's where you go back to the private time, the prayer time, and you're listening, because there's no way you can please everybody. There's just no way. If you get in shape and you're looking good, people are thinking you're too worldly. And if you don't do that, then, you're in the flesh. There's just no way to please folks. So you stand before God, kneel before God every day. And your goal is to say, Lord, let me do the things that are acceptable in your sight.
You try to be authentic. I think.
Oh, you have to be who you are. That's part of it. If you're trying to pretend to be somebody else in the pulpit or somebody else on the church field, but you're somebody else at home, that'll get old. You just be who you are.
Right, because you can't change yourself for every criticism or comment that you get. And I think that's something in the beginning I thought I could try to do. If somebody had a criticism or comment, I would, try to change things up so I could match expectations. And you realize there's a lot of expectations on you.
And you don't have to answer. I don't know if that's one of your listeners. You don't have to answer, have an answer for every critical thing. If somebody says something to you in a critical way, you don't have to respond to every critical assessment of your ministry.
That's a good one. Okay. And next, prayer time. Prayer time helps you and gives you power. Don't make it part of your to-do list.
Back in 1989, I had a deacon that was in state government, and he took me to a time management seminar, I think in Greensboro, North Carolina. And this is a leather-bound time daily management. I've had this since 1989, folks, and I've used it. It has in there a 12-month calendar that you can open up, and you could write in the calendar. And then you had like a month that month, and you would write down every page, like October 1st, you would write down the things that you did. And I got the impression is the more lines I could fill on that individual day was that's where I got my value. And I think that's wrong, because like when you're talking of prayer, you can't put down prayer and as one line and say, well, I didn't do nothing today, I just prayed. Well, that might be the most important thing you could have done that day. So don't get confused about prayer thinking that it's,
a checklist.
It's a checklist. I got to pray, I got to eat my cereal and, take my vitamins.
And each one of those is on a line that you can check
fill
off.
Each one of those off, and you really feel good about yourself at the end of the day.
Your worth is based on that,
But prayer is one of those things for me, is that you did bring praise. And there were times that I'm saying in a spirit of prayer, I just listened. We want to call it meditation, whatever word you want to use. I listened because I didn't see prayer as a checklist to God. Dear Lord, thank you for the day. Thank you for answering my prayer on these 3 things, but here's 6 more things that I've added to my list. See what you can do. Have a great day, Vince. No, you listened when you prayed. You were in that spirit, and sometimes God would speak to me very plainly in that still small voice.
That's a wonderful one. So prayer isn't just something you check off. It's something that you have to do to get your power for what you're doing in the ministry. Number 5, accept and convey to others that you can't do it all.
That's a hard one. I think that when you first start out pastoring, generally you're in a smaller church and they expect you to do all things. And they expect you to have a knowledge of heating and air conditioning, how to fix a window, how to unclog.
But there's fewer of these people that make demands on you, so it seems big at the time, but then when you go to the next church and it's even larger,
Yeah.
you're trying to manage that church the way that you did in the smaller church.
Yeah.
And then when you go from that church to the really large church, then you're still trying to micromanage all these little things in the same way it can be.
Yeah, you try to learn. That's one of the things that I think I was good at, was the ability to
Like delegate.
and not have
Yes.
that. But when you first start out, you feel responsible for everything. Offering's bad that week, it's your fault. Attendance is down, you're responsible for everything.
Yeah, fewer baptisms,
It's your
it's your
fault.
fault. Yeah,
You know, and maybe the church didn't see it that way, but that's the way I saw it, and that's a terrible way to live.
Yes, it is. And underneath that, we say that feeling responsible for everything all the time results in burnout.
Oh yeah, I don't know what the ratio of pastors are that are leaving the ministry, maybe in the prime of their years. I don't
Large right now.
know. I think that's one of the major things is that burnout thing. Where
Yeah,
you're trying
that
to-
feeling responsible for every
everything.
single thing in the church. And you feel responsible 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, every day of the year. And you take all of that guilt and pressure on yourself, and you never can take that mantle off and rest. And you're going to burn out. There's a guarantee.
Well, I think that we look at our culture today, and I'm trying to be positive. My wife is one of the most positive people I've ever met. She'd have to be. She's been married to me all these years. But we live in a culture of negativity. Whether it's a political office, we criticize. We look back on something they said 20 years ago, and we use that as an attack point. We look at sports. If our coach doesn't win, he's out. We're going in a new direction. And I think that the idea of burning out is you're trying to please everybody, and you cannot please everybody, and it gets frustrating because you hear the negativity, and some of that I think is responsibility of the church because they see the pastor as a punching bag. I don't like this, I don't like that. I've had people get mad at me about who was elected a deacon at our church. I'll not come back. I said, look, I don't elect the deacons, but it's your responsibility. So everything from deacon election to fixing a window frame.
And the deacon election is the church themselves
Yes,
voting.
yeah.
So you're like, well,
generally,
how am
I didn't
responsible?
vote. Yeah, generally, I didn't vote.
Right. How am I responsible for that? But
You are.
You do soon learn that a lot of people hold you responsible. And if I could go back and do something differently, it would be to accept and convey to others that we aren't responsible for everything, and we can't do it all.
Yeah, and you can do that in a non-threatening way.
Yes.
You're not telling somebody off. You can say that's not in my field.
That's right. I just can't do all that.
Can't do it all. I'm
That's
sorry.
right.
Sorry, I let you
Let
down.
you down. We've had to say that a few times for things that
lot.
weren't even our responsibility, but we still were sorry.
So I'm
And
sorry.
He's told me that many times. He said, I can tell you grew up in a pastor's home because you say sorry for things that
Sorry.
aren't even your
Yeah.
fault. So that's it. Number 6, learn to separate your identity from the church.
Another one.
Really
very
hard.
to do because you get identified with what you do. So when you introduce yourself, you tell them who you are by what you do.
Right.
I'm Vince Hefner, and I'm pastor of so-and-so Baptist Church. And you start thinking that you just kind of lose your personal identity.
And you wrote articles for newspapers all in the area across the state. You had your picture was in the paper all the time. He's written several books. And so people often would just come up to him. We could be in many counties over, and people would come up and say, hey, I know you. Who are you?
Yeah, or they'd say, I read your articles. And they wouldn't say whether they liked them. They just, read your articles. And I said, well,
I think they had to like them.
did you like them?
Well,
oh, yeah.
Yeah, sure. No, they had to. I had to like them. But, you soon get wrapped up in that. I know that when I would go to events outside of the church with a friend, maybe someone within the church would invite me to go to a concert or something, and they would introduce me to other people that they knew. It always pleased me. I didn't have it happen often. I can almost remember the specific times that it did when people would introduce me as their friend. Instead of saying, this is my pastor's wife, then that label is kind of, I hate to say it, but it's kind of on you, and that's how they perceive you. But it always really warmed my heart when people would say, like, this is my friend, Sherry. I like that.
Okay.
It's really sweet. Kind of keeps you a little bit separate out of that identity. And our last and not not least, because we probably have several we could continue
yeah.
to go over, but this is just 7 things we would do differently if we could do it all again. Don't forget that you're in a spiritual battle.
Yes, the battle you're in the church, well, in life, if you're a believer, it is not flesh and blood. It is spiritual powers in high places. And if you ever forget that, if you try to replace righteousness and evil with the terms good and bad, you're in trouble, because there's evil out there. And I promise you, evil forces want to stop you from doing God's work. And it's not just a matter of being good or bad. It's a matter of living in his righteousness, because you're fighting against the evil that's in this world, against the evil one. So don't ever think if you're in a situation, this is a physical situation. It's always connected to the spiritual. And I wish I could have remembered that more.
Because it is a big deal. And I think so many times in life, Christians, we belittle evil so that we
Yes.
can make it a little more palatable.
Sure.
We don't want to have that accountability. We don't want to see the black and white of saying, is this righteous or is this evil?
Right.
We want to blur the lines a little bit. And so that's something that, if you live in, around that kind of thinking for a long time, you can lose sight of the fact that, wait a minute, this is a spiritual battle.
Spiritual issue.
That's right. Well, that's it. That's our 7 things we
Hey.
wrote down. 7 things that we would do differently if we could do it all again. In the comments below, we would like to know, in your spiritual life, what you would do differently looking back over the years. You still might be a young person and have the
right.
opportunity to change the way you perceive certain things. We are still changing too.
Sure.
Even though we're getting older now, we're learning and writing things down and learning from things that we've done in the past that we'd like to change.
Well, I think we're going to shoot another video in the future.
Yes,
and it's
we are.
entitled,
Things that we would do the same if we could do it all again.
that's right, things we do the same. It's not always change.
That's
Sometimes you do things the same way.
That's
I wouldn't
exactly
change
right.
a thing.
And there's some things we've done well through the years, I think. And so we want to highlight those and, and stay positive. So let us hear from you in the comments. We are loving the comments, aren't we?
Very much.
Yes.
I try to answer each and
He
every
does.
one. And if you haven't subscribed to Pastor Life, we ask that you do subscribe. Hit that like button as well. And if you have a positive comment, we would love to hear it. And we do our dead level best to respond to each and every one.
Yes, we do. Thank you guys so much for all your love and support. And we look forward to seeing you in our next video.
God bless.